Episode 9. Has the West lost its innovation monopoly? For more than 200 years, the modern world has told itself a single story about where good ideas come from. Britain gave us the Industrial Revolution. Germany gave us modern chemistry. America gave us the transistor, Silicon Valley, and the internet. And everyone else, they manufactured what we invented. It was a comforting story. It was also wrong. Because the story was never really about invention, it was about who got to credit the invention and who got to build it. Trace an iPhone backward from Cupertino. The design is American. The software is American. The marketing is American. But the rare earth elements come from the Democratic Republic of Congo. The refining happens in Jiangxi. The batteries are built by CATL. The assembly happens in Shenzhen. The shipping is handled by Costco. The entire physical existence of the device is Chinese, African, and global, while the credit is Californian. The 20th century made heroes of the inventors. The 21st century may belong to the builders. The Needham question. But before we ask why China is winning now, we have to ask a deeper question. Why did we ever assume it wouldn't? For most of recorded history, China was the world's most technologically advanced civilization. Paper, printing, the compass, gunpowder, porcelain, cast iron, the moldboard plow, canal engineering, suspension bridges, the wheelbarrow, the sternpost rudder, deep drilling for natural gas. These were not curiosities. They were the foundations of civilizational power. The moldboard plow did not merely improve farming. It created the agricultural surplus that fed cities, supported specialized labor, generated tax revenue, and built empires. The compass did not merely help navigation. It enabled the maritime trade networks that connected East Asia to the Indian Ocean. Cast iron did not merely produce tools, it produced agricultural implements that fed millions. For 1,000 years, if you wanted to know how the world worked, you looked east. Then, Joseph Needham asked his famous question. Needham was a British biochemist who spent decades documenting Chinese scientific history. His question became one of the great puzzles of historiography. Why did modern science emerge in Europe rather than China? For 70 years, historians debated the answer. Some blamed Confucianism, some blamed geography, some blamed the Mongol conquests. But almost everyone agreed on one thing: something had gone wrong in China. Something had stopped. What almost no one asked was the opposite question. What had gone right in Europe? Europe did not invent modern science in a vacuum. It synthesized Greek philosophy, Islamic mathematics, Indian numerals, Chinese gunpowder, printing, and the compass. What Europe built was perhaps history's greatest knowledge assembly machine. Competing city-states, universities, patent systems, and a scientific method that turned observation into power. But synthesis is not the same as origin, and for 2 centuries we confused the two. The West did not invent the modern world. It industrialized it first, and then it told a story in which it had invented everything. The American machine. The American innovation machine is one of the great achievements of the 20th century. It would be foolish to dismiss it. Venture capital allocates billions to high-risk, high-return software ventures. The startup model, small teams, rapid iteration, move fast and break things, produced the personal computer, the search engine, social media, and the large language model. The University Federal Research Complex, NIH, DARPA, NSF, funds frontier science that private capital later commercializes. Intellectual property law turns ideas into assets. And the culture of individual genius, the lone entrepreneur with a laptop and a dream, remains a genuinely powerful force. This system is brilliant at turning an idea into a billion-dollar platform in 5 years, but it has a structural bias. It rewards what can be scaled in software. It rewards what can be protected by patent. It rewards what can return venture capital in under a decade. It does not reward what takes 20 years. It does not reward what requires 1 million workers. It does not reward what cannot be coded. High-speed rail is too capital-intensive, too regulated, too slow to return VC money. So America has no high-speed rail. Batteries are too physical, too chemical, too dependent on supply chains the US does not control. so America imports its batteries. Solar panels are too commoditized, too Chinese-dominated, too little software margin. So America debates carbon taxes while China builds the panels. Shipbuilding is too unionized, too expensive, too far from Sand Hill Road. So America has forgotten how to build ships. Industrial robotics is too hardware-heavy, too ecosystem-dependent, so America buys its robots from abroad. America's innovation machine is not broken. It is simply designed for a different game. A game played in code, not concrete. In apps, not assembly lines. In quarterly returns, not decadal infrastructure. And that design choice is now costing it the industries that will define the 21st century. The United States still leads where it has always led, at the frontier of theoretical science, in venture capital allocation, and in the culture of individual genius. But the frontier is moving, and the frontier is physical. The Chinese machine. China did not set out to copy Silicon Valley. It set out to build something else entirely. The American system optimizes for venture capital, software, and disruption. The Chinese system optimizes for manufacturing, scaling, and integration. These are not two versions of the same machine. They are different machines, built for different purposes, producing different results. China's machine runs on state-directed capital, patient capital deployed over decades, not quarters. The state does not bet on startups. It builds industries. It runs on manufacturing as innovation, the idea that the factory floor is a laboratory, that every production run generates data, that every supply chain bottleneck generates an engineering solution. It runs on ecosystem integration, not one company making batteries, but one region, controlling mining, refining, cathodes, anodes, assembly, and recycling. It runs on engineering culture, millions of STEM graduates treating hardware problems as solvable, and it runs on standards and scale. When you build 70% of the world's solar panels, your technical specifications become the default. This is not a bug in the Chinese system, it is the design. Look at the evidence. China did not invent the train. It built 40,000 kilometers of high-speed rail in 2 decades. The innovation was not the engine. It was the execution. The tunnels through mountains, the bridges across valleys, the coordination of labor and capital at a scale no democracy has replicated. BYD and CATL did not invent the lithium battery. They built the supply chain from the cobalt mines of the Congo to the refineries of Jiangxi to the gigafactories of Shenzhen. They optimized the chemistry, the cost, the scale. Today, if you want an affordable electric car, you buy Chinese, not because of marketing, because of physics. China manufactures 80% of the world's solar panels, not because it is cheaper, because it spent 20 years building the industrial ecosystem, polysilicon, wafers, cells, modules, inverters. The West debated carbon taxes. China built the panels. DJI did not invent the quadcopter. It built the ecosystem, the motors, the cameras, the flight controllers, the software, the global distribution. When the US military tried to ban DJI, it discovered it had no domestic alternative because America had stopped building. Unitree's humanoid robots are not science fiction. They are factory floor prototypes, tested in real conditions, iterated in months, not years. The innovation is not the algorithm. It is the speed from design to physical deployment. DeepSeek did not outspend OpenAI. It out-engineered it. With fewer chips, less capital, and more efficient training, it produced a model that challenged American assumptions about AI supremacy. The message was not that China had caught up. The message was that China's engineering culture could do more with less. China builds more commercial shipping tonnage than the rest of the world combined, not because it is subsidized, because it has the dry docks, the steel mills, the welders, the engineers, and the decades of accumulated know-how. When you need a navy, you need a shipbuilding industry. America has forgotten this. China has not. Flying taxis, autonomous logistics, drone delivery. These are not Silicon Valley dreams. They are Shenzhen pilot programs. Because when you control the hardware, the software, the regulation, and the airspace, you can test what others only pitch deck. Notice the pattern. These are not isolated inventions, they are ecosystems. Each sector reinforces the others. Batteries feed EVs, EVs feed the grid feeds solar, solar feeds the factories feed the robots feed the AI training data, the AI feeds the next generation of design. This is not a company. This is a civilization-scale engineering project. The question is no longer who is more innovative. The question is which system is built for the problems of the 21st century. Climate change does not need an app. It needs infrastructure. Energy transition does not need a platform. It needs batteries, grids, and mines. Artificial intelligence does not need a chatbot. It needs chips, data centers, and the power to run them. The 21st century rewards the builder. And the builders are in China. Who writes the standards? There is one final dimension to this story, and it may be the most important. Who writes the standards? Technical standards are not neutral. They embed assumptions about safety, interoperability, and design philosophy. When one nation dominates a sector, its standards tend to become global standards, not because it forces them, because it makes the majority of the product. In 5G, Huawei's involvement in global telecommunications standards reshaped the architecture of global communications. In electric vehicles, China's GB/T charging standard competes with the West's CCS, and as China exports more EVs, its standard travels with them. In solar, IEC standards increasingly reflect Chinese manufacturing practices. In artificial intelligence, open-weight models from DeepSeek and Qwen do not merely democratize AI, they decentralize control. For 2 centuries, the West wrote the rules because it made the products. Now China makes the products. And slowly, inevitably, it is writing the rules. This is not a conspiracy, it is arithmetic. When you build 70% of the world's solar panels, your technical specifications become the default. When you deploy the most EVs, your charging standard becomes the norm. When you train the most open-weight AI models, your architecture becomes the foundation. And here is where the multipolar world enters the story. The West assumed that the global South would simply adopt Western standards, Western technology, Western financing. But the global South is building with Chinese hardware, Chinese engineering, and Chinese capital. The Belt and Road was not just about ports and railways. It was about embedding Chinese technical standards across the developing world, not by force, by utility, by cost, by availability. The West offered ideology, China offered infrastructure, and infrastructure in the end is harder to argue with. The United States is not finished as an innovator. Its universities remain extraordinary. Its capital markets remain the deepest in the world. Its frontier AI research remains ahead in many domains. Its ability to attract global talent is unmatched. But talent and capital are not enough if you have forgotten how to build. And America, for 40 years, has been outsourcing its building. China, meanwhile, has spent 40 years learning to build. And now it is learning to invent on top of what it has built. The question is no longer whether China can innovate. It already has. The question is whether the West can remember how to build before it is too late. Because in the century ahead, the power to shape the world will not belong to whoever writes the best code. It will belong to whoever builds the machines that run the code, the grids that power them, the minds that feed them, and the standards that bind them together. The 20th century made heroes of the inventors. The 21st century will belong to the builders. And the builders have already started.